Thank you very much, David, for having given us the opportunity to come here to your house, to your home, in a beautiful place, which is the Isle of Wight in Rye. We will have been very, very happy to have you in our conference. You know, in the 25th of this, February, we will have a conference for the program, which is called Camino del Misterio.
Okay.
But for us, it's a great opportunity, to be here and at least to have some words from you for our, people who will be at the conference. So, first of all, thank you very much.
Pleasure. I couldn't make the conference because one or two people are trying to damage me at the moment, and I have to focus on that in the next few weeks. And 25th of February is pretty much in the middle of it. So, but it's great to have an opportunity, in this way anyway.
Many of our readers and people who listen to the program would like to have the opportunity to know a little bit about you as a person. How would you find yourself as a person? Who is David Icke?
Well, I've got a chapter heading in one of my books, I'm not David Icke, because, I see the difference between the true self, which is consciousness, and the experience my consciousness is having, which is at the moment it's called David Icke. And we can get so mesmerized by identifying with our name, our job, our culture, country, race, that we lose the real self-identity, which is consciousness. The David Icke personality level of me is the way I interact with the world, I guess, is a strange contradiction, you'd think, because everything that I've pretty much done in my life, whether it was a professional footballer or then a journalist and television presenter with the BBC, and then a national spokesman for the Green Party, and then all this stuff that I've done since 1990, they've all been in the public eye. They've all been in the public domain. And yet I am a very private person who doesn't like the whole public thing. It's funny that the way my life's gone when that's me. For instance, when I do an event, I'm back at the hotel as soon as possible, in my own space, because that I just like that privacy. I mean, I spend now, most of my life has been with other people, but over the last 5 years, I guess something like 90% of my life is alone. It's here, working, researching, and all the other things, and I go out walking alone, and I love interacting with people. I love the events and the interaction with the audience. That is just the nicest thing in my life in terms of my work and everything. But I'm a very private person, and I don't like the public side of it. I'd much rather be anonymous. But given what I'm trying to do, I can't be, and that's been a challenge for me. So you can imagine what it was like to experience in the early 1990s that absolute historic proportion level of ridicule that I went through in Britain, when the person experiencing it was someone who doesn't like the public eye, doesn't likes privacy. And my whole life was like, here he is, look, every facet of it. But it did something for me. You were chatting before about how did I overcome the fear of reaction from people in terms of what I'm doing and saying. And it's all kind of tied into that, because the greatest prison, or one of the greatest prisons, right up there, that most people live in, is the fear of what other people think. When you fear what other people think of you, then you're no longer living your life You're living their version of what you should be. You're editing your life. You're censoring your life. You are going through these mental processes of what do I leave out? What do I not say about what I feel? And how do I put what's left in a way that's acceptable to these people so they won't think I'm crazy or whatever? That's what happens when you fear what other people think. Well, my concern about what other people thought of me was hit by some nuclear weapon, it seemed like, and just shattered. And that was the years, and it still goes on today in the mainstream media in Britain, but who have no idea what I'm saying. They've never bothered to find out. He thinks lizards run the world, that's it. That's as far as it goes. Is there any more? No, it's just that. So you're always going to get that from the mainstream media. But in those days, in the early 90s, early mid 90s, I mean, it was just incessant ridicule. Now, when you even walking around here in your the town where I live was ridicule and laughter. Going into a bar or a pub, just impossible. Forget it. It was just uproar. When that happens to you, you either fold and just withdraw from the world, and it was tempting, but never considered, or like steel going through fire, you come out a different person in a way. And I came through it without that concern anymore about what people thought of me. Now, when you look at life, you can see it as a series of random events. This happens, then that happens, and that happens, all by accident. Or when you look at your life, and it's blatant when I look at mine, you can see things happening that eventually become a clear sequence of events that are leading somewhere. And when you think of the information that I'm writing and talking about years after that period of mass ridicule, if I had not been cleared out of the fear of what other people thought of me by that experience, that extreme experience, there's no way I would be talking about and writing about hybrid bloodlines connected to non-human reptilian entities and moons that aren't what we think they are. I mean, you'd go, I ain't saying that. What were people going to think of me? And because of the ridicule, I can do it without any even vague resistance of what will people think. Because people can think what they like. They have every right to think what they like, but then so do I, and that's the bit that we forget often. And so when I look back at that mass ridicule, I can't say I look back at it with affection. It was horrible. And my children were ridiculed at school and followed to school by journalists, and it was all horrible stuff. But it gave me a massive gift, and I've said many times in my books and interviews, life often gives you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. And it gave me my worst nightmare, but it also gave me, with hindsight, my greatest gift.
Your personal awakening, as you also commented, started in Peru. At least one very, very important experience you have. And I would like to ask you, what intelligence do you think they are behind this personal awakening for you?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because for people that haven't come across the story, through 1989, when I was a television presenter with the BBC and also a national spokesman for the British Green Party at the time, through 1989, I started having this very strange experience that kept on recurring, and that was that when I was in a room alone, it didn't feel as if I was I was alone. It felt like there was a presence there. And this got more and more powerful until the spring of 1990, when I'm in a hotel in London called the Kensington Hilton, working for the BBC, just across from where the BBC is in West London. And it was this presence in the room was so tangible that I sat on the side of the bed and I looked into the room and I said, look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall. And then, just about 5 minutes walk from here, I was with my young son, he was at the time, he's a strapping 30-year-old now, and someone stopped me down the seafront where there is still there today, there's a newsagent shop and bookshop, and near the station, and someone stopped me to talk about football. And when we finished this short conversation, I saw that Gareth, my son, wasn't there, but I knew where he was. He was in the shop looking at books. So I walked in and I was just said to him, come on, Gaz, we'll go up the town, get some lunch. And as I did so, my feet wouldn't move. This was the first real, if you like, confirmation to me that something real strange was going on. This is around March 1990, and it wasn't a voice, but it was a very strong thought form, if you like, that went through my mind that was almost of voice proportions. And it said, go and look at the books on the far side. And I knew this newsagent, this bookshop, very well. And I knew the books it sold. It sold romantic novels, pretty much. All it did sell at the time. And I thought, why do I want to go over the books? First of all, it's like, what's going on? But also, why do I want to go and look at romantic novels? But, of course, you're bewildered, but you're also intrigued. And I started to walk towards the books. And my feet could move then. And when I got in, all these romantic novels were there, perfectly formed English roses and all this stuff. And then there was one which caught my eye because it was so different right in the middle, and it was a book called Mind to Mind by a professional psychic called Betty Shine. And all I saw was the face in Mind to Mind, her face on the front. And I turned it over, and I read the blurb at the back, and I saw the word psychic. And what really struck me was, would this lady pick up, because I'd never been to a psychic in my life before at the time, would this lady pick up what I'm feeling around me, this presence? So I read the book in 24 hours. I contacted her, and she invited me over, and I went a couple of times, and what I said to her was not, look, I'm having these strange experiences, I don't want to lead people on like that. I want to see what comes naturally. I just said, quite truthfully, I've got rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, look at it. But nothing's helped. I don't take drugs. I won't take drugs for it. I wouldn't be here now if I had, given I've had it since I was 15. And maybe your hands-on healing, which she also did, would help. So I went, and I got the hands-on healing a couple of times. And we had a nice chat about other dimensions of reality. It all made sense to me. And the third time I went, I'm sitting on this bench, this medical type bench that she had, and she's sitting next to my left knee like that, doing the old hands on, and I felt like a spider's web on my face, like a cobweb, very, very obviously. Now this hit me immediately because I'd just read in her book, a matter of 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier, that when other dimensions of reality, whatever you want to call it, are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel a spider's web on your face, or like a spider's web, a cobweb. And of course, at the time, I'm thinking, what's going on? Now, all these years later, I know exactly what that feeling was. It was electromagnetic energy, because the way that communication happens between different dimensions, frequency ranges of reality, if you like, through psychics and stuff like that, is that it is done through an electromagnetic projection, an information field. So the information field is just information, energetic vibrational information. So an English psychic would tune into that projection and they would decode it into English. A Spanish psychic would connect into the same information field and communicate it in Spanish, etc. Anyway, I didn't say anything to her about this feeling, the spider's web, and she's doing that. And then about 10 or 15 seconds after I felt that, she goes, "Oh my God, I've got to close my eyes for this one. This is powerful." And I'm going, "Ooh, what's going on here? It's all new to me." And then she starts telling me in March 1990 that these figures in her mind's eye, projections again. I mean, she hasn't got two physical bodies in her head. It's a projection, something to focus on. And she was telling me what these figures were asking her to tell me. And it was that I was going to go out on a world stage eventually and reveal great secrets, that I was going to write a series of books, that there was an energetic transformation coming, which I dubbed the truth vibrations at the time, because what I was told was this energetic vibrational change, which I now would describe as an information change in the information fabric of this universe, was going to act like a spiritual alarm clock. It was going to wake people up from what they were in, which was basically a hypnotic state, a coma state, living a fake reality, as I would say today. And that these truth vibrations, this vibrational change, was going to have that effect. It was going to get people to start waking up like Sleeping Beauty from the amnesic state. And it was also going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden from us. And if you think about it, that was 22 years ago as we speak. In 1990, there was absolutely no sign or evidence whatsoever that there was going to be some colossal human awakening. And certainly there was no evidence that all this stuff that has been hidden from us was coming to the surface. But when you look at it now from the perspective of early 2012, wherever I go in the world, and I did a big world speaking tour last year, so I spoke in all parts of the world, there is a global awakening happening. It's not the vast majority yet, it's not the majority yet, but at different levels, people are awakening and they're looking at the world and themselves and reality in an increasingly different way, more expanded way. And events in the world are in many ways triggering this, because people are looking at this mayhem that's going on and going, what's happening? What's happening? They're looking for answers. And then you look at what we know now about how the world is controlled by a network, a cabal of families that control the banking system, the political system, the transnational corporations, the oil cartel, the pharmaceutical cartel, the biotech cartel, the global media, mainstream media, etc. You look at what we know now about how that works and what its game is and what its methods of manipulation are, compared with not even 22 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, then what I was told on that March day in 1990 about this transformation of human society and the effect of this vibrational information change is demonstrably happening and has been happening for a while now, and it's getting more and more powerful. I mean, the people who are now beginning to go, hold on a second, I'm looking at myself and the world in a different way suddenly, are people who just a little while ago you'd say, never them, they will never break out of the box in their lifetime, because they seem to be so enslaved by it. And now even some of those people who were absolutely system programmed people are now beginning to see it. So, and it's interesting, coming around to one of the points of your question is
What do you think is your higher self? Is benevolent, intelligent?
Well, this is an interesting thing, because you would think when I was contacted in that way in 1990 that I would have been desperate to know who it was, names, dates, places, come on, and all this stuff. But I wasn't. It was like something within me knew that for whatever reason I'd come to do something, and this was fundamentally connected to it. And so there wasn't this battle between David Icke, television presenter, Green Party spokesman, and this experience, which it's like I knew. And so it felt so right to me, I just went with it. And what happened after that experience, and something similar happened a week later when I went back, and the contact continued. And one of the messages that came through that time was, one man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. And this is a vital fact. This is not about me. It's about the information. That's the transforming thing here. And for all these years, over 2 decades now, every now and again you might have a little thought, I wonder what this force is that, because it was blatant from that experience with Betty Shine, from then on, that when the communication said through her that they were going to put information into my mind, and at other times they were going to lead me to knowledge, that there was no need for arduous seeking. All I had to do was follow the clues they would give me, because it was all arranged a long time ago and before I kind of came here as David Icke. From that time, absolutely that happened. It's been like some hidden force handing me pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, virtually in the order necessary for me to see where they go. And if that had not been happening all this time, I would not have produced all these books. I would not have been put together all this information. I would not have connected all these dots. If just the David Icke level of me, I'd been left to get on with it, I might still be on book 2, and it would be nothing nearly as expansive as what it is. There is a force, and only very recently, because I had this feeling that I wanted to go back to Peru, where so much happened to me in February 1991. Incredible experiences, paranormal experiences you would call them. I've just had this feeling for like 6 months or even a bit more. I need to go back to Peru, and I was going to go back on my own. And then some organisers in Australia who I worked with last year said, "Well, why don't you get some other people to come with you, and we'll make it an event that more people can share." So because of that, my mind has actually been turning even more recently to what is this force? Mm-hmm. And I do think that at some point I am going to get very clear confirmation of what it is. I don't see it, you see. I don't see it as like extraterrestrials in some ship or something like that. I see it as a level of awareness, a level of consciousness. And in the end, while we perceive ourselves as so-called humans and our name and job and income bracket and all the rest of it, we are all, in the end, if we open to it, we are all higher realms of consciousness. So in the end, because everything is one, at some level we're communicating with ourselves. The question is, how expanded is that level of self that you are communicating with? Because if you shut out the higher levels of self, you get pulled into mind-body, which is basically filtering and decoding and perceiving everything through the 5 senses, which is a very, very low, narrow, incredibly limited range of perception, and that's where most humans have been and still are, because the system has been structured to put them there. And this is a key reason why when people who, throughout history, whoever they are, who have opened their mind to a greater consciousness, not means that they're special and you know, messiahs. It just means they've opened their mind to what anyone can, higher levels of awareness. So your point of observation of everything changes. That's why they have been ridiculed and or condemned or dismissed throughout history. Because what they are perceiving, what they are decoding, is not being perceived and decoded by the vast majority of people who are still in that closed-minded state. And thus it's like a person talking one language trying to understand a person talking another language. They just don't understand what you're talking about, mate. But what's interesting is as this collective awakening it happens, people are going through the same process. And so more and more people are starting to look at what I'm saying because they're starting to decode the same stuff, and therefore it's starting to make sense to them.
Could you tell us about any of these paranormal experiences? Something that happened recently, for example.
Well, what happened in Peru was a life-changing experience, and funnily enough, the organisers of the return to Peru, you know, a group of people, they've organised it so that my 60th birthday will be celebrated, if you like, in a stone circle in Peru, and it's for a particular reason. After the Betty Shine experience, the old life fell apart. Very soon after, within like 2 months, maybe slightly more, of the meeting with Betty Shine, the BBC announced they weren't going to renew my contracts, so I was out of work. And I could have looked for other media work, but this was telling me, no, there's another road now. And so I didn't. And I spent 1990 basically walking around going, you know, what's happening to me? Trying to get together what was happening and where I was supposed to go, and it was bewildering, really. And but in that period, I put together a book which I called Truth Vibrations. After this vibrational change, I was told was going to come, and demonstrably it's here now. And then when that went off to the printers in late 1990, I started getting this constant recurring feeling, I need to go to Peru. Now, I'd never thought about Peru before. I've seen the football team play in the World Cup, and that was the end of my experience of Peru. But it was so powerful, and by now, and this was a big thing that happened after the Betty Shine experience, was that my intuition was now governor. When this said, what you doing? What you doing? And this said, you've got to do this, you need to do this, I need to do this, then this would always decide action and direction. And that's been the same to this minute. Because this intuition knows, this thinks and tries to work it out. This knows because it's accessing a much more expanded level of awareness and consciousness than this is. And so when you look at people, so many people, because of the fear, it's interesting, as we keep talking, all these different strands come together and connect. The fear of what other people think gets people to deny and suppress their intuitive knowing. I just know I've got to do this. I just know I need to go there. You can't do that. What will people think if you? And so again, being cleared out of that fear of what other people thought allowed this to take center stage in the direction of my life. And so the intuition said go to Peru. So purely on that, I got on a plane to Peru in February 1991. And I had no idea why I was going, except I knew I had to go. And it's a long story, an amazing story, but from the moment I landed strange things started to happen. Like someone would walk out the crowd to me, which they did, because Lima Airport at like 6 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning, or 5 o'clock in the morning, I think it was when I arrived, was just packed with people. And I'm standing there. I've got off a plane from America, and I'm thinking, what now? Why am I here? That's how it was done. And then this person just walks out. This fellow walks out through this mass of people and said, "Where you go?" And the only thing I'd read about before I came out, this happened very quickly, was Cusco in the Andes, the center of the Inca civilization. So I'm thinking, Cusco. I said, Cusco. And there was a plane going, and it was going to take off in about, I don't know, half an hour, maybe 40 minutes after I arrived. So I'm thinking, I'm never going to get that. He said, I get you a ticket. No, he said to me, have you got a ticket? No, I get you a ticket. Do you have a hotel? No, I get you a hotel. And off he goes. Of course, he's on a commission. And so then he gets me this ticket, and there's this massive queue for the Cusco flight. And I go to the back, being English, and he said, no, follow me. And he took me down the front of the queue, and his friend was checking people in, and he checked me in next. I was like, what? So less than an hour after I arrived in Lima, I'm walking across the tarmac to get on a plane to Cusco. And from that moment on, this whole synchronistic series of events happened. For instance, when I got to Cusco, I'm now in the hotel, I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, well, what now? And someone had said to me, if you need any help in Peru, this is a friend of mine, give them a call. So I called them, and because they worked in a local travel agency in Cusco. And they said, well, come and see me. And I went to see them, and they said they then got on the phone organising all my travel, Machu Picchu and all this stuff for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. She said, you need a guide. So I've got just the one, picks up the phone, talking in a language I didn't understand, and then I went round to see this guy the next morning, and we were going to go off, and he was going to take me around Peru. He was a professional Peruvian guide, with all the Peruvian clothes you'd expect. And I went round to his home to join up with him the next morning, and I knocked the door. There was no answer, and I pushed the door, and it opened. So I walked into. I'm looking, and there he is. He's not in bed. He's asleep on the floor, with his hat on and his, blanket. And he looks up at me, and he said, not hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. He said, do you have any dreams last night? I'm thinking, what? And funny enough, I'd had this absolutely vivid dream the night before that one of these two middle front teeth had fallen out. So I told him. He said, is your father or grandfather still alive? I said, yeah, my father is, yeah. I said, why? He said, because that's often symbolic of your grandfather or father dying. Next time I got a phone call to England, a few days later, my father had died back in England. In fact, the funeral had happened before I even realised he died, because, once you get into the wilds of Peru, the communication with Britain, forget it. In those days anyway. And so we go around, we go to Machu Picchu, we go to all these places, and eventually we come to a place called Puno in southern Peru. And he was organising all the stuff in league with this travel agency, and they booked us into this hotel called the Siustani. And Siustani is an Inca ruin, about an hour and a half's drive from Puno. And because it's named after this ruin, there's pictures of it all over the hotel. And every time I looked at these pictures, somebody was saying, you need to go there, you need to go there, you need to go there, you need to go there. So I said to this Peruvian guide, I want to go there. And it was a kind of funny sequence throughout this trip with him, because every day this would say, you need to do this. And I'd say, I need to go there. And every day he would tell me it wasn't possible. And every day we'd end up there. And it was the same with Siustani. Anyway, so we get in. He said we have to hire this bus, this little bus. Well, actually, you didn't. You could get a cab, but I learned later. But obviously, he took some money for that. Fair enough. And me, him, and the tourist bus driver go out to Siustani. And it's this completely, or virtually uninhabited. There are some houses, but not many, area. And there's a hill with all the ruins on top. And then there's like a lagoon around it. It's beautiful. And then if you look in any direction, there's distant mountains. And there was no one there except 2 children with a llama for tourist photographs. So there were no tourists apart from me. And I went up and I walked around the ruin. And it was lovely. It was beautiful and nice. But at the end, after about an hour, I'm thinking it was great, but it did not match the urge this was telling me I had to go to that place. So anyway, I got back in the bus with me and the driver and the guide, and I was quite disappointed, really. I thought, I expected something different, more, given the urge I had. So we're driving away, and about 3 minutes down the road, I'm looking out the window, and I'm just kind of daydreaming, as I do a lot. And then I see this hill, mound, whatever you want to call it, to my right, and I'm looking at it. And as I was looking at it, all I could hear in my head was, come to me, come to me, come to me, come to me. And you think that mound's talking to me, this is crazy. What's happening to my life? So I said to the guy, could you stop the bus? I want to go up that mound. I said, I won't be long. And I was quite a time, actually. And I walked up the mound to the top, and I couldn't see it from the road. But when I got to the top, there was this big stone circle, which I'm going to go back to. And it's like, whoa, stone circle. And I walked into the middle of it. And over there was Siyustani, just across the way, distant mountains, and then all this, pretty much uninhabited land as far as the eye could see. And I walked to the center of the circle, and I got the feet again. I got like the burning in the feet, like some magnetism was pulling my feet down, like in the news bookshop in Ryde down the road here. And then 2 very clear, again, strong thoughts, voice, whatever you like, went through my head. The first one said, they'll be talking about this 100 years from now. And the second one was, it will be over when you feel the rain. And I'm looking up at a cloudless Peruvian sky with a piercing sun, and I'm hearing in my head, my mind, it will be over when you feel the rain. It just seemed to be the conclusion, the climax of the ludicrous direction my life had gone. There's no way. What do you mean it'll be over when you feel the rain? Anyway, what I was feeling as I was standing there was like a drill going into the top of my head, through my body into the ground. I was feeling another flow coming back and out the top of my head. And then my arms went out at 45 degrees, like that, without me making any decision to do it. And you can't hold your shoulders like that, I can't anyway, for very long before they start to ache. But mine were like that for, must have been, 40 minutes, maybe more, while this process situation happened to me, because this energy coming through me got more and more powerful until I was literally shaking, standing there. And I was going in and out of like my conscious mind, like you drive a car and you can't remember where the last 2 miles went because you've been in the subconscious level. And then one of these times when I came back to my conscious mind, awareness, if you like, I realized that over the distant mountains, and it was quite a long way away, there was this light grey mist. And it got darker very quickly. And I thought, it's raining. And over the next, I don't know what it must have been, half an hour, this rainstorm came out of the mountains. And the weather forecasters talk about weather fronts. Well, this was a weather front. The front of this storm was dead straight, like someone had drawn it with a ruler, and it was coming towards me. It covered the sun eventually, and it was all happening ridiculously quickly. And I was looking up as it got closer, and there's these billowing clouds like dry ice on a stage, and I could see faces in them and stuff like that. And eventually, I'm looking at this wall of stair rod rain coming towards me. I mean, if you did it as special effects in a movie, people would say that's ridiculous, that's just far-fetched. It happened. And as it came towards me, I'm now absolutely at the peak of this energetic, whatever the heck was going on. And then the rain hit me, and I was instantly soaked because it was so, immense, the wall of rain. And as it hit me, all this energy stopped. And my life was never the same again, because I had energy pouring out of my hands for hours, and I had a crystal with me, and I was holding this crystal to try to take this energy out, and it was pouring out of my feet, and I couldn't sleep that night because it continued. And I came back to Britain. Many other things happened in Peru as well, but I came back to Britain, and the book The Truth Vibrations was coming out, and the media started to get hold of the fact that something strange was happening to me. And that's when I went on the chat show on the BBC prime time called The Wogan Show, and the ridicule started in earnest. But what happened after that experience in Peru is that for 3 months, it was about 3 months, maybe slightly more, I didn't know what was going on. I can see it now as I look back at it, that whatever hit me in Peru burst that bubble that we live in. And with the bubble bursting, information and concepts and perceptions poured into my conscious mind, and you just couldn't process it. When you press too many keys on a computer, it freezes because it can't process so much information at the same time. Well, that was what happened to me. And so for 3 months, I mean, I didn't know what planet I was on, where I was, or anything. And then one day, after all the ridicule and all the stuff, and that's all people remember because the media's in a time warp on that in this country, suddenly it was like everything morphed into clarity. It was like the computer just unfroze. And now, people were saying to me, who knew me, hey, I thought you'd gone mad. You're the same guy I've always known. Well, on the outside, I was. David Icke was back, if you like, but not the one that had left, because now I could see the world in a completely different way, and I could see what I couldn't see before in terms of the way the world was being manipulated in a very coordinated fashion, while being presented to us as random events that aren't connected. And I've come on from there.
Connected to all these subjects, because you were before talking about the need to open to a greater consciousness, but at the same time, you are also very conscious of the manipulation through things like New Era, and people feeling that they are contacting with higher beings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And feeling with the heart and things like this. But at the on the bottom of the question is, how come many people can feel the difference between opening to a higher benevolent influence or to a manipulative force?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and a very, very important one. I see so many people over the years who, for want of a collective term, come from a new age direction and call themselves spiritual and all this stuff. And it's words. They're not open to a higher level of consciousness. They are still in their mind. They're still in the box, but all they're doing is expressing the box in a different way. I've met some really lovely people who might be termed New Age, genuine people, but some of the most vindictive, manipulative, deeply unpleasant people that I've met in my life have been love and lighters, because it's for them it's all words. It's all selling an image to hide the fact that behind it is something very different. And it seems to me that the harder you try to sell an image, the more blatant it is that there's something behind the image you want to hide, because you don't have to sell the real you. You have to sell a facade of you, because the real you doesn't need selling. And so if you kind of open your self to other levels of reality, the question is absolutely what level of reality? Because so many people, especially in the realm of this cabal, big time, are actually having their mental and emotion, what passes for emotion, their mental and emotional processes possessed by entities and projected possession that is controlling their thoughts and dictating their actions and perceptions in a very, very deeply malevolent, horrific way. So it's not connecting to something else, it's what are you connecting to? And in the end, what I've found over the years is there's a certain resonance. And I've learned to trust it, and I've learned to trust it because it's proved to be accurate so many times. In the end, that's the outcome. Are these different things you're perceiving in terms of communication, do they prove to be accurate or not? And there's a certain resonance when I look at something, and there's a resonance that goes, yes, 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 and there's another one that goes, no, no, no. And I've learned to feel that and see it. And I've had people say to me, insiders, and they say, you've quoted a disinformer in your book. I said, really? And they said, yeah, but you've only quoted him on what's true, right? Because disinformers don't tell you 100% nonsense. It's partly true to pull you in, and then they twist it. And he said, how can you do that? I said, well, I didn't knowingly do it, but something of what he was saying went, yes, yeah, and the other one went, no. And so there's an energetic resonance that you feel. And then there's the other thing, which is, what is the outcome of this? What is the direction that you're being taken by this which is guiding you, influencing you, if you like? And when I look at what I do and what I've done for 22 years, and I'm following this guidance, if you like, I've dedicated my life completely. I mean, I live alone. I've lived alone for 5 years, and in this little flat, and this is where I work all the time if I'm not traveling. And I've dedicated my life, thanks to all this, to uncovering how people are manipulated, how people individually and collectively are suppressed, the techniques of manipulation and suppression, where this cabal wants to take us, what the cabal is connected to, and absolutely prime for all that to be dealt with. Who are we? Where are we? And what is reality? And so when I look at the direction I've been taken, and the information that's come to the surface as a result of that, information that talks about, loving each other rather than hating each other, cooperating rather than competing, and all these things, coming together, putting down the fault lines that divide us of religion and race and culture and stuff. I mean, let people have them. Good luck to them. None of my business. But don't let them be this divide and rule fault line network that they've allowed to become. When I look at all that, when I look at the fact that nothing that I've been guided to communicate is about people fighting each other, hating each other, being violent or anything, then I look at that and I think, that'll do me. I'm happy with the direction and the nature of the information that I've been guided to communicate, and that feels to me as if there is some force that has the interests of humanity at heart, that is trying to bring an end to these eons of human control, suppression, and horrific treatment of people in so many ways over thousands and thousands of years. So I'm at peace with that. If this guidance and everything was saying we must take up arms and fight the enemy, we must hate those that suppress us, we must hang them from trees, then I'm thinking, hold on a second, this ain't a force for good. But that's not what's happened. So that's how I've worked with it anyway.
What do you think is the structure of reality? People are talking about dimensions, timelines. It's becoming a mess, every day more and more.
Well,
imagine how really is the structure of this reality and who's behind it?
Well, this process of this hidden force guiding me, you only have to follow the clues. It was all, decided a long time ago, organized a long time ago. It's taken me through many different phases. First of all, in the early years, after the Betty Shine Peru experience, it was all about, if you like, the 5 sense level of this. It was about a cabal of families controlling the different facets of human society. It was about manipulated wars, manipulated terrorist events, and all this stuff. And then it moved through the mid to late 90s into this area that's kind of phased a lot of people, that there are non-human entities behind this, which seem to be dominated by a reptilian form, but there are many others in league with them. And then from about 2002, 2003, came for me the most important part, which was when the pieces in the puzzle started taking me down the road to understanding the nature of reality itself. And only from that perspective can you, A, see where the answers lie, and also B, in any way, fully understand the way the conspiracy works and the depth of it. It's clear to me, 22 years on, that if you are an expert on 9/11, an expert on banking scams and political scams and manipulated wars, all of which are absolutely necessary to people to know, and I do all that myself. But if that's all you do, you're still walking around the outer rim of the rabbit hole. You've not even entered it yet. And to understand the nature of reality is to, at least the foundations of it, the themes of it, is to understand the depth of this conspiracy and how it works. It's my view that, and increasingly, it's people are moving in this direction when they see the evidence, that this universe, at its foundation, is a waveform resonance information construct. It's, if you like, a harmonic information construct. That's the foundation. And that's the foundation of the human form and everything in this universe. We then decode that information from the vibrational to the electrical, which is then fed to the brain and the genetic structure, which decodes that into the form that we experience, which is a holographic reality, which appears to be solid, but can't be. I mean, this is why in quantum physics they have this mystery of how atoms are supposed to make up a solid world, but atoms have no solidity whatsoever. How can that be? The answer is, you don't have to have solid atoms to create this reality, because this reality isn't solid, it's a hologram. holographic reality. And if you look at holograms that people make and sell and stuff, the best of them look as solid as you and me, but you can put your hand through them. I mean, they're just illusions. They're illusory physical. And therefore, it's a decoding process. And, when you're pushing against something, like a wall, and you can't get through it, we decode that through to the holographic level as solid pushing against solid. But actually, it is a electromagnetic resistance that's causing that. And if you can change your electromagnetic state, in other words, you can change your vibrational state, then you can perform what are called miracles. I mean, how can this world be real when, as we experience it, when you walk through fire, you get burned. When you walk through fire in a state of awareness or a state of relief, that when you walk through fire, you get burned. But you go into another level of awareness, I've seen it done, and you can walk through fire and not get burned. Because, something can only burn something else if you decode it that way. An illusion can't burn an illusion unless you decode it that way. Because in the end, it's all energy. It's all information fields. We just decode them through. Now, the classic vibration to electrical to perception is the ear. All the five senses are there to turn vibrational information into electrical information, which the brain then constructs into this reality, or the whole genetic structure does. So you get the vibration in the ear, because when I'm speaking, my words are not passing between us. A vibrational field of information generated by my vocal cords is passing between us. And the only time you hear what I'm speaking is when you decode that information through the ear into the brain. So this is, I mean, I could talk forever about the illusory nature of reality and what we take to be real. And thus, this universe is a harmonic waveform information field, which is decoded through into this reality. Now, I talk in my books about what I call the hack or the distortion. And if I go on the internet with a computer expert could hack into a website or hack into a computer and could actually firewall it off so that we don't decode vast tracts of the internet. I mean, classic example is China, where they firewall off their computer system so Chinese people can't access a vast amount of the internet that the rest of us can, well, until give them time. And so when you see how this universe is an information construct, and how we decode from that construct into this reality, and our state of being and the expanded or unexpanded nature of our reality and perception is deciding what we are going to decode out of that field and what we aren't. That's why some people will get perceptions or experiences, and other people won't get that perception or have that experience. And when you understand that, two things can happen, and I suggest they have happened. One, you can manipulate the genetic structure, the decoding process, what I call body-mind-computer, so that it will not access vast chunks of that information field, just like the computer system in China. And when quite early on in this story, in the early 1990s, pretty much after it all began to start for me, one of the earliest things I came across was interbreeding between humans and non-humans, which are recorded in ancient accounts in virtually, if not every, culture in the world. They give them different names, but for the entities involved in the interbreeding, or the name of the group, it could be Chitahuri or Anunnaki or whatever. But it's the same theme. And the theme is of a genetic manipulation of the human form. And we see genetic manipulation from our perception of reality. What these manipulating entities see, the way I see it now, is it's like a biological computer, and you can program it and you can change how it decodes reality. And it's interesting that depending what scientists you talk to, they say that between 90 and 98% of human DNA is what they call junk DNA or non-coding DNA, because they don't know what it does. So it's the idea that we'll call it junk because we don't know what it does. I mean, the idea that 90 to 98% of human DNA has no purpose is ludicrous. The question is, what is its purpose? And what I find fascinating, because it really is the direction that I've been going for a long time now, is that some cutting-edge, open-minded scientists who have looked at this, they are coming up with the fact and discovering the fact that absolutely it has a purpose, this non-coding junk DNA, and also it has its own language, which is very different to the DNA we seem to know about, or think we know about. And what I'm suggesting in my newer books is that within non-coding DNA, a software program, as I would call it, has been put into the human genetics. And it is running human perception. If I put a software disk in a computer and I press the right buttons, then that computer's reality on the screen will be that software program. And when you think how human emotion is one of the greatest controllers, suppressors, and drivers of human behavior and perception, and then you realize that actually the way the body reacts to emotion of various kinds is not the body reacting to some external thing. The emotion is coming, human emotion as we perceive it and experience it, is coming from the body. And what I'm saying is it's coming from this software program within non-coding junk DNA. And if you are in body-mind, five-sense reality alone, then there is a very, very good chance that you go your entire life in this world without having a single original thought or emotional response that hasn't come from the software program. That's the scale of human control, and that's how deep the rabbit hole goes, and it's only as far as we are now. So we have the thoughts and we have the emotional responses, but where are they coming from? When you see people like Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist, and others who talk about archetypes, they say that they can basically break down human personalities into 12 big archetypes and combinations of them, some others too, but really major ones. Well, hold on a second. We live within all possibility, infinite possibility, and you can break down human personalities into not many archetypes and combinations of them. What's going on? You can't break infinite possibility down into a few archetypal personality types, but you can if it's a software program. You absolutely can then. And so that is running through human the human system. And if you go into a quiet state and and you can do this if you work at it. You can literally observe your own thoughts. You know, the chatter in the head never stops. You know, you go into a quiet space. What did I say? And we take that to be us. But you can go into these states of awareness where you literally just move back and observe your own thoughts, and you can listen to them, and you can observe them and going, it's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. What are you doing? But then the question comes, what's observing those thoughts? The real you. What are those thoughts? The software program. And what the system has done systematically is to get us to identify, confuse who we really are with the software personalities that we're given. And so, when you start to break out of the software dominance, and you move your point of observation beyond the program into the realms of true consciousness, then those who are still running the program thinking it's them, they're going to think you are insane or dangerous or ridiculous, because they literally cannot compute through the software what they're doing, what you're saying rather. And so this is what the awakening is that I was told about 22 years ago. It's breaking open the mind to move your point of observation from the software program into levels of our awareness that are beyond the software program. And at that point, you can see what the software program is actually there for us not to see, which is all the things that are going on around us that we don't connect, we don't think are possible, because the software program is telling us what to believe. And then it goes to the next level, because as these pieces in the puzzle started going into this direction, you have the software program running through the human body computer, if you like, which we take to be us. And that's incidentally why, you know, if you type data into a computer and then you press enter, you pretty much know, well, you bloody well know what that computer's going to do, because it's programmed to do it. In response to that data, press enter. Wherever you go in the world, and you watch people in different situations, i.e. the situation being the data on the computer, then you press enter, i.e. the response of people to that situation. All over the world, invariably, you will see people of different cultures and what have you react in the same way, usually through emotional responses in the same way. Why? We live in infinite possibility. There are infinite possibilities to react to that situation, but the same ones keep recurring. Why? The same reason. And so there's that, but there's also what I call the hack, which is that this force that is behind human suppression and behind the human, apparently human families that are behind the suppression in the world that we live in, has created a fake reality. It's hacked into the information construct of the universe, this part of it anyway. And it has created a fake reality which is being fed to us. I think the moon's involved in this. As I go into in the latest book, Remember Who You Are, Saturn is big time involved in this. And pennies started to drop when I was writing this latest book particularly, of why, as people have been pointing out for years, researchers, that Saturn symbolism is everywhere. When you look at it, courts, governments, secret societies, Saturn symbolism everywhere. So you say, why? Why is Saturn symbolism everywhere? And then you realize the impact of Saturn, and you start to realize why these secret societies and governments and everything, and society in general, the structure of it, the authorities of it, are obsessed with Saturn symbolism. And it's like we should be decoding a much wider range of information, i.e. decoding a much wider range of information into our experienced reality. But this hack, in conjunction with this genetic manipulation, has put us in a tiny, tiny frequency range, which people don't realize how tiny it is. The electromagnetic spectrum, according to mainstream science, is, some people say, about 0.005% of what exists in this universe in mass and matter. Some people say it's a bit more, but not much. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can decode into a reality we can see, is a fraction of the 0.005%. People think when they look out their eyes that they're seeing everything that exists in the space that they're observing. No, no. They're experiencing a tiny band of frequency, and all the rest of the universe and multiverses and infinity in general is all sharing the same space. Space is an illusion too, really, that I'm sitting in, and it's all existing in this space. But because this is programmed to only decode this narrow band of frequencies we call visible light, this is the only band that I can see. And thus, when people talk about the paranormal and all that stuff, and ghosts and things appearing and disappearing, well, they haven't appeared and disappeared. But if they enter our frequency range, we decode them. It appeared out of nowhere, and then it leaves our frequency range. We can't decode it anymore. It disappeared in front of my eyes. No, it didn't. You ceased to be able to decode it because it left the frequency range you can decode. So once you realize this, all this paranormal stuff becomes perfectly explainable.
So what we call extraterrestrial actually is not extra anything, because it's just sharing our own reality on different dimensions, on different levels.
Yeah, I prefer to use the term interdimensionals for that reason. And this force that I'm saying is manipulating our world operates overwhelmingly outside of the frequency range that we can decode, because that's its state, that's its vibrational state. Basically, that's what you're vibrating to, you experience. I mean, it's like a radio. If you tune it to radio 1, your experience is radio 1, because that's the frequency you're tuned to. Move the dial to radio 2, now your experience is radio 2. But if you're on radio 2, you cannot experience radio 1. It's a different frequency. It's real simple that way. And so to manipulate our reality, this force, which very much takes a reptilian form, among others, but actually in the end goes out of the realms of form into realms of pure awareness. It needs to manipulate our world. It needs people, if you like, human body computers within this frequency range, so it can manipulate us by controlling the banking system and all the stuff. And thus, this is where these hybrid bloodlines come from, which the ancients all over the world talked about, the creation of these hybrid bloodlines. And these hybrid bloodlines became known in the ancient world as the demigods, part human, part gods, as they were perceived, because there was a genetic creation which in one level has human genetics, but has a massive infusion of reptilian genetics. And these are the bloodlines that run the banking system, the political system, own the media, and all that stuff. And this is where the whole theme of royalty comes from, an aristocracy. The idea of the divine right to rule, which is what? The right to rule over people because of your genetics. I mean, 2 hours from here in London, we have a head of state, Queen Elizabeth, who is only head of state because of her bloodline, or genetics. The ancient Chinese emperors used to claim the right to be emperor because of their genetic connection to the serpent gods, and so on and so forth. It was this hybrid genetics that this whole royalty aristocracy stuff all over the world came from. And when, obviously for a long time, the aristocracy and the royal families of the world ran the show. But then when people started to rebel against that obvious dictatorship, these bloodlines moved, some of them still are, like the British royal family, big time, but they started to move out of over royalty and aristocracy and into the professions of banking and politics and business and all the rest of it. And they've gone on controlling and manipulating ever since. So they've created a political system that allows them to put into power basically whoever they want now, through this illusion of democracy. But these dark suits are actually, they still perceive themselves, even though it's now covert, as special bloodlines, who are above everyone else. And while some are overtly doing that, like the British royal family, the Spanish royal family, most of them are operating under the radar in society in general, but they're still the ones who are the hybrid representatives of this force, these entities that operate outside of human sight. And just a very quick analogy. When scientists are working with something that's too dangerous, that they can't directly interact with it, you'll see them put the material in a tank. They'll stand outside the tank, and then they'll put these long gloves on to work with the material in the tank. Well, if you take the scientists to be these entities operating outside of human perception, you take the tank to be our reality, and you take the gloves to be these bloodlines that are representatives within this reality of this force. That is basically the dynamic, the association between them. If you're out there and you're successful, I mean, I've heard this so many times. How many people have said this to me, researchers and stuff like that, or of me, not necessarily to me, no. If you were genuine, you'd be dead, right? And it's like, whoa, now that's taken giving your power away to a whole new extremes of existence. So, this world is so controlled and we are so impotent to do anything about it that your only confirmation that you are genuine is if they kill you. This is like the medieval drowning of alleged witches. They put you in the ducking stool, and if when they put you under the water you drowned, you were not a witch. If you don't drown, you are a witch, and they kill you. I mean, it's a joke. I mean, we should be celebrating people who are successful in breaking through the system. Not, well, he's successful in breaking the system. He's got to be part of this. Oh, please. But this is a much wider area, and very, very important. I was reading a detailed account of writings, texts that were found in Egypt. I think it was in 1945. Nag Hammadi, I don't know the exact pronunciation, it was very close to that. It was the place where they were found. And they were writings from people known as Gnostics. And funnily enough, very early on in this story of mine, right in the early 90s, one of the first things I came across after, I became clear that there was something going on, were the Gnostics and people like the Cathars. And the Gnostics, like those that ran the great library at Alexandria, and the Cathars, were invariably slaughtered by the system in all its forms, not least Christianity. And their writings destroyed. But these writings were, and texts were found in Egypt in 1945. And I've been reading detailed accounts of what they say. It is fascinating. And it was in many ways like reading my books. When you look at them, it's clear that things like the New Testament were Gnostic writings to a large extent, that have been censored, that have been changed around, and where the symbolic has been delivered as the literal, which has kind of caught everyone out, that follows the religion. But something like a fifth of these writings talk about something called the archons. And the archons were clearly perceived as a non-human force that operated outside the realms of human sight. And when you look around the world, you see the recurring theme. In the Zulu tradition, they're called the Chitahuri. In the Islamic tradition, they're called the Jinn. And so it's the same thing under different names. Then they'll talk about these archons. And there were so many concepts that they talked about that absolutely mirror what I've uncovered myself over these years. And one thing they talk about is that the archons are terrified of humans because humans have the ability for creativity, they have the ability for expansion of consciousness, whereas the archons do not have the ability to create. They have to mimic that which is already created. And they are devious manipulators of reality. But the reality has to exist before they can piggyback it and manipulate it. And they talk in their own way about the fact that the archons created, in effect, a fake reality, which we are decoding, humans were decoding, believing it to be real. All these themes, it's like, I talked about the pieces in the puzzle. One of the things that happens to me in this process is that stuff is held back. It's happened a number of times that I could easily have come across until a certain point, and then suddenly I come across it, and it's at that exact point, really, often exact point, that says to you, see, it's right. And so I'm reading this stuff about the archons and the way they manipulate and the way they possess the minds of humanity. And this theme comes up again, that they are, compared with humans and human potential, extraordinarily limited, and therefore they have to piggyback humanity, and they're terrified of humans awakening to that's going on, to their existence, because then the game's up. And so I have this image in my talks where I put a reptilian face in a box, and then I put a humanity in a smaller box, and that's the situation. The only way that these archons, reptilians, whatever name you want to use, can control humanity is doing it A, covertly, and B, putting humans in a smaller box than they're in. We have this, and by box I mean perception of reality and self. And we have this phrase, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Well, the archon reptilians are the one-eyed man, and they've made humans blind so that they're king in this reality while we're blind. And so this awakening that we are now experiencing among incredibly expanding numbers of people is their worst nightmare, because we are breaking out of the box, and it's a box that we've been put in, and once we break out of it, we break beyond their box, if you like, and they become impotent in terms of their control of us. And this is why I've been saying for years now that it is not a coincidence that at the very same time that this awakening is happening, on the other side we are having this almost like panic speed imposition of the global Orwellian state, and surveillance, control. They want microchipping, and they're bombarding us with radiation to destabilize us, with food and drink additives to destabilize us electrochemically and all the rest of it. It's because, while it seems on the surface that this is an attempt for more and more control, it is in a way, but they're in a different game now. And they knew, if I knew 22 years ago this was coming, how long have they known? And they've been preparing for it. And thus, the old way of control, which is for thousands of years, religion, all this thing, and people just not thinking and going through their lives, I know my place, and I believe what the religion tells me, and all that stuff. That's fine. Controlling people in that mode has been easy, but they're in a different game now. They're in a different game where these truth vibrations are impacting ever more powerfully on more and more people, and thus the way they controlled humanity before is not enough. That's why this explosion of Orwellian control is flying in now, and has been for some time. It's because it is a defense mechanism to try to mitigate and overcome the consequences for them of the human awakening.
Do you think, as before we were saying, that if people were able to control their own genetics, they will be able to create their own reality and starting to live their own lives, not manipulate it?
Oh, of course. I mean, this is where what people miss when they say, if he was genuine, he'd be dead. It's the fact that the way out of this is to open ourselves to that level of awareness, thus potential to dictate our own reality, that has been kept from us. And when we do that, especially in together with forces that, the forces that contacted me 22 years ago, they're not sitting on Orion in a deck chair, on the beach. They have been working all the way through these 22 years, and they are just an expression of a much greater operation, if you like, that has been created, is happening to remove this human control and human suppression. Thus, this combination of people opening to a greater awareness themselves and connecting and being influenced by this even greater awareness that is benevolently trying to help humanity out of this, that means that the more we do this, the more power this reptilian or conic energy or force, whatever you want to call it, the less influence and power it's having over us. And you know, there's this old phrase about, you know, a duck going across the water and it looks very calm, but underneath the water it's flapping like crazy. Well, we see this arrogant kind of control system, but under the water it's flapping like crazy because it's almost, in its eyes, it's a race to get this world locked down, to get people microchipped, externally controlled, and their vibrational state externally suppressed, to get this lockdown of humanity technologically and in other ways before enough people have awakened to bring their house of cards down. So it's like you've got the irresistible force, which is this awakening and the information change that is triggering the awakening. And you've got what thinks it's the immovable object, the control system, but ain't. And this is desperately trying to defend itself with all this stuff that's happening, all this Orwellian stuff, from this. And at the moment, we're in this cusp where both forces, if you like, are at work. And so you can see people who are going that way and people who are going that way. And it's all kind of chaotic and all the rest of it. But there's going to come a point, because this vibrational change is cumulative. You know, this thing about 2012 and all great chat, I don't buy that at all. 2012's greatest significance is it's not 2011, but it's not 2013, 2014. And there comes a point where a tipping point where the impact of this new energetic construct and its influence on humans to awaken from the box is such that the control system comes down. Because it's my view that, say you're hacking to a computer and that hack has a code. It's a code that hacks into the computer. Well, if you can unravel that code, the hack's gone, and suddenly the computer, the range that you can access on your computer dramatically increases. I'm absolutely convinced that there is an energetic code, probably a harmonic code, which when we find it, and we will, is going to break the hack. And it's when that happens, it's going to be like Sleeping Beauty woke up. Humans. It's going to be like, what just happened? What just happened?
When do you think it's going to happen?
Well, before I leave this place, I hope. That's the idea. But we'll see. Well, no, I don't see it. I think myself that by 2016, 2017, I'm not saying that's another 2012 year, but by 2016, 2017, when you see how many people are awakening now, and even more important to me, the kind of people that are awakening now, who you'd never thought would do so, what is going to be the impact on human perception of self and reality by 2016, 2017? I think, you know, by then we'll really start to see this control system start to quite blatantly unravel. But I think, you know, in the next little while, it's going to seem as if it's going on and on and on in its fascist way. And another one of the themes of the last 22 years, almost right from the start really, is that just when it seems the control system has got all the aces, all the answers, it suddenly comes down so fast that people will be shocked at the speed. And when you go back from the holographic in this world, this limited world where we see everything in limited terms, and you go back to the vibrational harmonic information construct, when that changes, this changes. And if this changes fast, that must change fast, because this is just a projection of that. And what they've done, this reptilian archonic energy, and it goes beyond that into, like I say, in the realms of no form. They have created a distortion in the information construct of this part of our universe. They have created a distortion, and the distortion comes through to the holographic world as a distortion in human emotions, a distortion in human perception, a distortion in the violence in the world, a distortion in the fact that everyone, vast majority of people are trying to just walk over other people, a distortion in the way we see ourselves, a distortion in the way we see reality. And it's like I call it the schism. And that is the energetic foundation of the control system. That is why the control system has no problem sacrificing children, abusing children, having people starve in a world of plenty, have wars galore, and economic catastrophes that affect fundamentally, negatively, the lives of millions and multi-millions. That is a distortion played through as a distortion. I mean, what more distortion can you have in your perception of how to live life than to coldly engineer a global economic collapse in 2008, which has had catastrophic effects on people all over the world? That is an expression of the distortion. Banks that hoard all the money, and then when they get in trouble, people bail them out, and then the people then have to go into austerity bloody situations because of the financial implications of bailing these what more definition of a distortion can you have? So that's why the world is as it is. What these truth vibrations are doing, and what this, I say, harmonic key or code is, it's going to break the distortion. It's going to be like, what I'm seeing as I'm talking to you is a piece of rubber that has been distorted, right? And then something happens, distortion gone. When the distortion's gone, its holographic expression must go, which is the control system. And that, I feel, I mean, obviously it is deeper than that. I'm using symbolism and all that stuff here. But in theme, that is why I feel that there has been this constant theme in my life through 22 years at different points. Just when the control system looks like it's got all the answers and in complete control, it's going to come down so fast, people are going to be shocked.
What the control agenda has planned for the 21st of December of 2000?
Well, I think 2012 is massively overblown, overhyped. But when you have certain beliefs in something like a year, well, those things can be then manipulated by the control system to make you think they're happening, because maybe that in some ways is what we'll see, because what they want is people in states of fear, anxiety, because when you're in a state of fear and anxiety, people even use this phrase, oh God, I feel so heavy today. And the heaviness they're feeling in their anxiety and their depression and their fear is because those emotional states, again, software, pull the energetic field into low vibrational states. And when you come into low vibrational states, I feel so heavy, you are not going to be connecting to high vibrational states, greater expansions of awareness and consciousness. And that's another interesting thing while I'm talking about it. Another totally common theme that you find, and I found through the years, is that these reptilians, archons outside of human sight, they feed off human energy. that's their food, that's their sustenance, that's their power source in so many ways. They're like energy vampires. But of course, if you're going to absorb energy, you have to absorb energy that is vibrating within your frequency range, or like 2 radio stations, it's going to go through. So, one of the key things that they've done in this software program, I say they've put into human genetics, way back, is human emotion, but human low vibrational emotion, fear, anxiety, guilt, frustration, anger, fury, hatred, all these things. Because if they put them in the software and human experience triggers the software, or the software triggers the emotion, then they've turned humans, as Morpheus said about the machines in the Matrix when he held up a battery, and he said, they've turned humans into one of these. Well, they've turned humans into, through this software which is running these emotional reactions through as responses, they've turned humans into batteries, generators, power stations of the very low vibrational emotional energy that these entities feed off. And so whether it's a conflict between individuals, or whether it's a war or whatever, the emotional reaction to those things and the emotional responses are generating the very energy they want. So we've come a long way from there are a few greedy families in the world that want to control all the money. That's just the outer expression of it. This is so deep, and only by understanding how deep it is are we going to bring an end to it. And these are the areas I would suggest that this control force is terrified of humans becoming aware of. And really, and it's a good thing, really, comforting, half the people of the world don't have to awaken to bring this to an end. It's interesting when you look at research that has been done into the power of heart energy and associated things through organizations like this HeartMath Institute in America, where they found that the heart energy is the most powerful electromagnetic field in the body. But more than that, they found that emotions like love, appreciation, caring are thousands and thousands of times more energetically powerful than things like hatred and all these low vibrational emotions I've been talking about. So once a certain percentage of the population moves into those states of being, nothing even approaching half the population to switch the energetic dominant force, if you like, from that which is we've had to that which is coming.
You have written that aliens use technology to travel along our time to manipulate our reality or perception of our history. What is your perception of timelines or time deception?
Well, my feeling is that our perception of time is certainly among, if not the greatest form of locking us into this fake reality. You talk to virtually anyone who's had a serious out-of-body experience, or near-death experiences, that they're called, and they'll tell you that their relationship to time dramatically changed when they left the body. That past, present, and future all came together in the same moment. And people who've been into deep states of meditation have experienced the same. There is no time. There is only one infinite now. And what this hack has done, and a major part of this hack, has been to project this information field, this hack into the information field that carries the information of what we call time. So time, as we perceive it, one thing following another in a sequence, in effect, is the way that we decode this hacked information. The left side of the brain does it massively. It takes information from the now and it puts it into a sequence. This is why, Einstein, used to say that time was relative, because, to paraphrasing, if you put your hand in boiling water, time seems to pass very slowly. But as he put it, if you're in the company of a beautiful woman, then time seems to pass very quickly, because it's relative. When you're in a situation that you don't really want to be in, then your decoding system, particularly in the left side of the brain, puts this sequence, constructs this sequence in a way that moves slowly, or appears to move slowly. When you're doing something you really love, then this sequence is put into to move quickly in the way that we experience it. So time is completely relative. I mean, we have an invisible line in the middle of the ocean, and if you go that way across it, you go into yesterday, and that way you go into tomorrow, and it's like, it's crazy. I mean, this is crazy. It's all manufactured, and thus, when your greater awareness, your greater consciousness is operating in a state of no time now, the infinite now, but that which is experiencing this reality has got caught into this illusory sequence that we call time, then already they're in different realms of or states of being, which is already disconnecting the influence of one over the other, because they're in different realms. This is in the now, this is in time. And it's fascinating to me too when I look at Saturn, and how Saturn and the Moon, clearly, which I say are part of this hack, are so connected to our perception of time. See, the Romans, they worshipped, their major god was Saturn. They used to have a festival every year in the period running up to our Christmas called Saturnalia, where they had put trees up in their homes and decorated them and handed out gifts. It was our Christmas. And they worshipped Saturn. And the Greek god of Saturn, the Greek name for the god of Saturn, was Kronos. And Kronos is where we get Father Time from. Kronos is where we get the Grim Reaper from, because Kronos was portrayed with the scythe, with the sickle or scythe, and so time and Saturn and the Moon are fundamentally connected, and I feel that this hack in so many ways has created this illusion of time that keeps us from the infinite realm of no time, or from connecting with it in a way that it will influence us. It's a big part of the control system, what we call time. And because we're so welded to it, and I completely understand it, we find it very difficult to perceive anything that could not have time sequence as we know it. But when I look at the now and all that stuff, and what we perceive as time, if I put a DVD, a movie, into that television there, and it started to play, after I've watched it for a while, the scenes that I've watched in the movie would be my perception of the past. The scene I'm watching will be my perception of the present, and the scenes I've yet to watch are my perception from here of the future. And yet all those scenes, past, my perception of present, and future, all exist on the disc in their entirety at the same time. The question is, where on that disc am I watching at any point? Because that's my reference point. That's my now. That's my present. Everything past, everything gone before, everything still to come, past and future. But it's just all there at the same time, in the same disc, the same now, before you've watched the first scene. You know, time is not what we think it is, but it is a massive, massive way of enslaving us in a perception prison.
Do you think we exist simultaneously in different timelines?
Definitely. You know, in the end, everything is one. Thus, everything exists infinitely. And of course, there are different expressions of this infinite. This one's called David Icke, but connected to what's called David Icke, going into other realms of reality, out into the great infinity, are other levels of the infinite one and other levels of me that are not called David Icke. This is just the expression of this multi-level consciousness that is having this experience here in this reality, but we operate over multiple realities. And what the hack, the control system has done, from the knowledge of how to do this, which these reptilian archonic kind of entities do, is their idea is to isolate this expression of this infinite awareness from higher, more expansive levels of it, and to get this level to see itself in isolation. Little me, I am my name, my job, and all the rest of it. Because then they got you. Because then they've got you in a smaller box than they're in, and the one-eyed man is king. This awakening is taking us beyond this to see that this is just what it is. In fact, it's just a point of observation. That's all. You move your point of observation, you're suddenly not David Icke in its entirety. That's what you are. You are consciousness having an experience that someone called David Icke. And already your point of observation has changed. The idea of the control system is to pull our point of observation into five-sense reality alone. And you look at the world, you look at society, you look at the way it's structured, and it's all about enticing the five senses. Look at this, smell this, feel this, you know, listen to this. It's all pulling us into the five-sense level of decoding reality, which is and one of the great pollutions that is being imposed upon us more and more is sound pollution. Sound pollution. Don't give people the chance to have silence as much as you can. Pull them in. Get them to put the telly on. Get in the car. Put the radio on. Kill the silence. Because when you go into the silence, you go into the all that is. Because people think that silence is nothing. What can you hear? Nothing. You can hear everything. Because within that silence is all possibility waiting to manifest. So if I'm talking now and killing the silence, what I'm doing is I'm pulling one possibility out of all possibility, the silence. And then when I stop talking, it's back again. And so what we're doing is pulling possibilities out. We call it form, we call it manifestation. But in the silence and the stillness, which I've experienced in other states of consciousness, that's where everything exists. Some people call it the void. I don't like the name the void because it gives the impression of nothingness when it's everythingness. It's all possibility. Within that stillness and silence is all that is, has been, and ever can be. Because you know, you hear people say these phrases through your life. Oh, it's all that is, can be, and ever. You know, and you think, you know, before you kind of wake up, you think, well, what do you mean? It's all that is and ever can be. Oh, it's ridiculous. How can that? All possibility. All possibility must be all that is, can be, and ever can be. It wouldn't be all possibility. So then you start looking at you're looking at these paradoxes that aren't paradoxes. So you say, within this is everything and nothing. You can't have everything and nothing. You've got to be one or the other. Well, you have in this world, yeah, because that's the way we perceive it. But within all possibility, everything and nothing has to exist, or it's not all possibility. Everywhere and nowhere has to exist within all possibility. This is where it all comes from, this infinite possibility, that people call the infinite, the all that is, and all whatever. And we're just experiencing a tiny fraction of possibility from within all possibility. And the more we're isolated into the fraction of possibility, the more the few can control us, and they do, but not for much longer.
Hybrids interbreeding, what proportion of the population of the planet do you think is real human 100%?
Another great question, not least because, you know, my thoughts have been going this way for a while. I think there's a very significant, I can't put a figure on it, but a very, very significant number of people that we call humans are actually biological robots. And it's interesting when you look at where within our desperately limited science, within the public arena that we can see, when you see how far they're now going with robotics. I mean, I saw one the other day, somebody sent me, and you knew it was a robot, but you sure as heck could see where it was going, in terms of it not being a million miles in terms of advancement from you not realizing it's a robot. And then you go beyond the public arena and you go into the underground bases and the secret projects, which are light years ahead of the technological development within the public arena. And then you go beyond that into the realms of these entities that understand reality better than we do because they put us in a box smaller than them in terms of that. And you start to appreciate, especially when you're looking at, you know, holographic inserts and stuff like that, where you can see that it is very possible at their level of knowledge to create apparent human beings that are just biological robots, biological computers. But you know, when you think of robots, oh, I am a robot or a computer, you know, no, that's just a word to give the theme of what I'm talking about. We're talking about dramatic advances on that. I mean, if the human body, and I suggest it is a human body mind, the lower mind is a biological computer, then which is animated by consciousness, then why can't you have a biological computer that is animated by some other force, you know, like some program? And like I've said earlier in this chat, that I say this is a software program running through all human bodies, and I do feel that there are a very significant number of people in this world that we call human that are not attached to consciousness, shall we say. They are purely biological software playing through, and not something that we would call human in our perception of human.
Can we distinguish them from real human? Is there any sign?
Well, I think when you are connected to any form of consciousness, then especially any expanded consciousness, then there's a sparkle in the eye. There's life. You feel life coming off people, and you know, I've noticed over the years that some people have what we call good vibes, some people have what we call bad vibes or negative vibes, but there are a certain group that have no vibes. It's like they're dead. It's like a dead zone, and that could quite possibly be it. But see, the thing is that one of the greatest forms of mass control is to suppress their sense of what is possible. This is really so important. If you have this view of what's possible, then you have this spectrum of possibility to explain, look at, research what's happening in the world and how it's happening and what's being done to make it happen. If you are given this and you accept it, this amount of perception of what is possible, then when some people come along and say this is happening and this is happening, you're going, that's impossible, you can't do that, it's impossible. No, you've been led to believe it's not possible. And people dismiss things, and now suddenly, to explain what's happening in the world and how it's being made to happen, you now have that to explain it. And that's why there are so many mysteries in the world, because there's very little you can explain about the wider happenings in the world from that perception of what's possible. But once you do that, now you can see not only what's happening, you can see how it's being made to happen. And so they work very, very hard on suppressing the human perception of what's possible. And that's why you see, I mean, a number of people that have laughed in my face at things that are provable fact in terms of what's technically logically possible. But because they don't know that, they laugh at it, even though you can say, look at it, there it is, it's happening. And suppression of the possible is very, very fundamental to the control. And this is where education comes in. This is why they control the education system, and it's not an education system, it's a programming machine, a programming and a suppression of perception machine. That's what it is, and that's why they do it. I mean, the suppression of the sense of the possible happens from the earliest age when you enter the education system.
Have you personally met any reptilian, draconian creators? Have you seen it with your own eyes in any occasion? Have you felt the presence? Have you felt the presence of one of these entities?
What I work with a lot is feeling energy, and it's like everything. The more you become sensitive to energy, the more you feel different vibrational fields in different situations, where when you're desensitized from that, which most people are because that's what they're manipulated to be, then everything becomes basically one energy field in effect. And sometimes if it's extreme kind of negativity, you might go into a house where, like an old house where there's been a lot of really horrible things going on, which has impacted upon the energy field, and you go into the house or whatever and you go, oh God, I don't like it in here, it's horrible. What do we say? The atmosphere is horrible. What is atmosphere? It is energy generated by people. And not only that, it's energy generated by entities operating out of human sight, which also impact upon our energy field. And there is a certain vibrational field which I feel coming off people, which I say myself is what I call reptilian, what other people call archonical, whatever. It's a certain energy, and there's something in the eyes. And again, it's like people talk about the eyes being the window on the soul. Well, they are. They are, in the sense that the eyes take you through into another level of someone, and through the eyes you can see what they are in so many ways. And as with the dead eyes that I talk about, which I think are biological robots, so with the reptilians, it's an atmosphere, it's an energy, because you can it's why becoming sensitive to this is so important, because you can manipulate people with words, you can manipulate people with smiley faces, but you cannot hide your energy field, right? You can put the front on, you cannot hide your energy field. And one of the things that I've noticed, again with the eyes, is when I look at these people, which I would say are absolutely reptilian, people like Tony Blair and Hillary Clinton and others that of the same kind of ilk. What do you call it?
Or the Browns.
Yeah, what do you call it? Barack Obama. No matter what their face is doing, smiling, happy, slappy, their eyes don't change. There's this cold stare in their eyes, which they're whatever their face is doing, that never changes. I say that's this reptilian archon forces run.
What do you think about this idea that people are beginning more and more about that in a couple of years, 2012 or 2014, the Earth is going to split in two. The new Earth are going to stay in people who are going to have a certain type of vibration, and on the old Earth are going to stay the old paradigm people or something like that. Do you see anything about this?
Well, you know, I would only say this, that we exist in the frequency range that we are ourselves in. Thus, I can in this level exist in this frequency range. If my frequency range changes, then I move into another frequency range. And thus, well, I'm not saying there will be, but I'm just talking in terms of the concept. Excuse me. If there was a massive shift in the human vibrational field, then it would have to perceive another vibrational field. Because if you're tuned to radio 1, you don't experience radio 2. And if you are attached to, say, radio 1, and there's not a massive shift in your energy field, then you're going to stay attached to radio 1. So, in principle, that I can see the energetic frequency direction from where they're coming from. That if there's an energetic shift, then there must be a parting of the ways in which, in terms of what those two states of being are experiencing. So, energetically, it's possible, but whether it will be or not, I don't know. I mean, the thing is that we as humans have been kept so ignorant of reality and the fluid nature of reality that anything's possible when you
think it's possible.
But anything's possible. Whether it will happen or not is another thing, but anything's possible once you realize how fluid reality is and how your perception becomes your reality and all that stuff. And we've been kept in this tiny little box of ignorance about it that, you know, we're still feeling our way. Even people who have really started to open to this are still feeling our way in terms of seeing the true nature of what we're experiencing rather than what we thought we've been experiencing all our lives, and what everyone around us continues to tell us we're experiencing, because that's all they can perceive. You know, this is a real time of transition, and we've got some extraordinary surprises and revelations to come. And I said in a book years ago, you know, I think that when we finally, you know, do realize what reality is and what we've been experiencing and the way we perceive the experience as opposed to what we've been experiencing, then I think we're going to laugh for weeks and weeks at the way we've perceived what we're experiencing from the perspective of when we know what's really going on. It's going to be so funny. You know, we believe that? Oh my God. And you ate that sandwich and you thought it was, oh my God. This is where we're going at, and it's a great adventure because no matter what happens and the, you know, emotional experiences we have, we are all it is, has been, and ever can be. That's the worst it gets. So, you know, whatever is happening is always temporary.
You have written also about the moon as a very important factor in this whole reality. Can you say some words about
Yes, well, in fact, it actually goes off from what I've just been talking about. We have been given such a false version of everything that what I suggest we need is what I call the blank sheet of paper, where we put aside all preconceived idea of what we believe about anything, and we get the blank sheet of paper. Now we're going to look at everything afresh, and it's going to justify its place on the paper, in other words, our perception of reality, based on information, intuitive knowing, all these things, instead of what someone has already told us, parents, teachers, journalists, scientists, that we should believe about something. And one of the things you find, very common theme, is when you take so-called scientific fact and you chart it back to its origin, you find that it's not fact at all. It's a theory, an assumption that's been perceived as fact by constant repetition. So what happened to me, so in terms of scientific, this is how things are, I don't accept that. Blank sheet of paper, it might be true, but it's got to justify itself to me. I'm not just accepting it because you're telling me. And one of the sequences that started after the Betty Shine meetings was that I would get an insight out of nowhere. And from that moment, and it might be a strange thing, like, what? And from that moment, information starts coming into my life, and people, and what have you, personal experiences relating to that insight, which basically saying, see, the insight was right, look. And these are the pieces of the puzzle being given to me, which is why I say, if it was left to the David Icke level of me, I wouldn't have been anywhere near, what I'm doing now. And so I went into that office we were in earlier, and I sat down one morning when I was writing a book called Human Race Get Off Your Knees. And when I sat down, this voice, a strong thought form, went through my head out of nowhere. Worse to the effect of, the moon's not real, the moon's not what you think it is. Now most people will go, oh, what? No, come on, carry on with your day. But because I've been through it so often over 20 years, 20 years by then, I thought I'll go with this. So I then put into NetFind, search engine, a combination of words that the moon is not natural. And up came immediately a book called Who Built the Moon? By two researchers, I'd not come across it before, who were looking at the facts about the moon, the incredible anomalies about the moon, and the extraordinary mathematical connections between the moon, the earth, and the sun. And their conclusion, with evidence, was that the moon had to be some kind of construct. And I'd thought about this in the past every now and again, but then it was just fleeting and you got on with your life. But now it was time to focus on this. And the bits and the puzzle pieces came in, and I put this thing together. And I didn't realize that, until I started doing that, that two Russian scientists from the Soviet Academy of Scientists in 1970 wrote a detailed article basically asking the question, is the moon some form of extraterrestrial spacecraft? And again, the longer we talk, the more everything kind of connects to everything else. I mentioned earlier that one of the greatest ways of suppressing human perception is to suppress the perception of the possible. And if we're going to understand what's happening to us, we have got to redefine our perception of what is technologically possible, and what is possible in terms of holographic projection, which can project things in ways that look absolutely solid and real. I mean, you can interact with them in that way, come to that. And because of the suppression of our sense of the possible, things like the moon not being a natural body is, like, to most people, it's ridiculous, because they can't conceive that it's possible. But we, because of the suppression, have been living in the technological Stone Age. And thus, what's happening around us, which is technologically massively more advanced than we think is possible, is happening without people questioning it, because we couldn't perceive there's anything to question. It's got to be real. And I say this, imagine back in the Stone Age, when there's this guy sitting there and he's knocking rocks together, and another guy comes over to him in the Stone Age, points to the moon and says, you know, it's possible to build something that flies like a bird right up to that moon. And he's knocking rocks together. That's his perception of the possible. So the idea that that is possible, ludicrous. You know, you've been on the mammoth juice, right? But even though to Stone Age people that was impossible, clearly it is possible, but only when you know how. And thus when people look at the moon, and I think other bodies too, and they say that no one could have constructed that, or at least hollowed out some natural type body and if you like, reconstructed it, they can't think it's possible, but it is. And when you look at the moon and you look at the anomalies, it's quite clear that it's not a natural body. It's either a completely unnatural body, or it has been, as these Russian scientists postulated, it's somehow some kind of hollowed out planetoid. I mean, look at it. Look at the size of the Earth and look at the size of the moon. It's massive. It shouldn't be there. And there are tribes that are still in existence that talk about the fact that their tribe goes back so far that it was before the moon was in the sky. And it's a thing that we, again, when we come out of the womb into this world, we tend to accept that what's here has always been here. But it isn't. I mean, I go into this in Remember Who You Are in some detail. Even the solar system that we see now has not been like that for that long in geological terms. And then when you, and I go into this in the book as well, because of an experience I had as a kid, then we can ask another question. Again, we're coming back to this blank sheet of paper. Is what we see out there, is it really there? Or is it some kind of holographic projection that we are decoding? Because we are taking waveform information, vibrational information fields, and we're decoding them into holographic reality. Therefore, we look into the great beyond and we see this vastness of space and the stars all that time away. But the only place they exist in that holographic so-called physical state that we're perceiving is in our decoding system. So there is actually the distances we perceive that everything is apart from everything else is merely that which we are decoding to be like that. So is it really there, or is it a projection? These are the things that we need to start asking and questioning on the blank sheet of paper, because all bets are off. You see, I tell this story in the new book. I was brought up in a place called Leicester in the Midlands of England. I think, let's say we didn't have much money. I was brought up in the 50s and the early 60s as a kid, and most of the 60s. We were, I remember going around the back of the factory where my father worked with my mother on a Thursday lunchtime, so he could hand that week's wage packet to us so we could eat that night. That's how hand to mouth it was. So we didn't go places. We rarely went on holiday. When we did, we came to the Isle of Wight, which is why I fell in love with it and why I'm here now. But one day, out of the blue, My father, I was a little kid, it must have been about late 50s, maybe 58, 59. And he announces we're going to London on the train, the whole family, and it's like, we don't do that. But we went, and I can still see it now. You know, I can see this picture of all these legs, this vast crowd of people trying to get a ticket on the train. Going on a steam train, I went to London. Now, in my entire knowledge of my father, he never once mentioned the word astronomy or talked about the heavens in any way, shape or form. We get to London and he takes us to the planetarium, right? I didn't know what a planetarium was. It was next to Madame Tussauds in Baker Street, which is, it's not there, the building's there now, but it's not a planetarium anymore, I understand. So I go into this planetarium, it's all kind of new, because we're talking late 50s, and the London Planetarium, which we went to, actually opened in 58, so maybe that's why we went, because it was so new. Anyway, I'm sitting there, a little kid, if it was 58, 59, I'd be, 6 or 7. And I'm looking around thinking, what's going to happen? And there's this contraption in there, and this darkness in the sky, and then the show starts. And it's midday, it must have been midday, something like that. And suddenly, I'm sitting there, and the night sky is above my head. And the stars were moving. And the stars looked like they looked when I look up as a kid at night. And you know, there are times in your life when something hits you. It really smacks you and you don't forget it. That was one of my moments. It impacted it. That moment when I saw the heavens on that dome ceiling of the London Planetarium in the late 50s, it imprinted something on me, which I've never forgotten. And the last couple of years I was out in the countryside, about 2 or 3 miles from here, just sitting on a bench, and I just looked up. And when I looked up, it was daytime. I saw the sky as a gigantic dome, and I thought, is this real? Is this a projection? Like the planetarium, it came back to me. That story came back to me when I had that experience. And then a friend of mine, Neil Haig, who does artwork for my books, I was talking to him about this. He said, "Have you seen that movie, The Truman Show?" And I hadn't been out a long time, but I got it on DVD when he mentioned it, and I watched it here. For people that haven't seen The Truman Show, it starred Jim Carrey, and he was born on the set of a soap program, but he didn't know that. So he's growing up thinking this is real in life, and his mother's his mother and his girlfriends, and they're all bloody actors. And every time he tries to get out of this little town, this set as it turned out to be, something stopped him. And he started to get, in the end, suspicious what's going on. And cut a long story short, eventually he gets on this boat, which he thinks is going out to the open ocean, and he goes out and he goes out and he goes out, and eventually he comes to the wall of this massive freaking dome in which it's all been going on in. And then he walks up the edge of the dome and out the door of the dome into the world as it really is. And whoa, that hit me like a train when I watched that. I thought, that's it. Vibrationally, holographically, in terms of projections that we decode, that is our situation. And then, this soap show, The Truman Show, which everyone was watching, the only person didn't realise was him, that it was all a big act. The operations centre, where it was all manipulated from, looked like the moon. And I think that whoever wrote The Truman Show got seriously bloody lucky, or had some idea what he was writing about symbolically. And I am saying that Saturn is part of that process. That the way it seems to me is Saturn is the main projector of this fake reality. And then you look at Saturn and you say, you know, anything's possible. You know, what's real anymore? And the moon is amplifying that and focusing on the Earth particularly. So we get a much more amplified version of it, therefore much more powerful fake reality. And people talk about, you know, insiders have talked about bases on the dark side of the moon that they've seen in pictures, and NASA, they talk about domes and buildings and strange non-natural artifacts or buildings and structures on the moon, not just on the far side, that's where most of them are, obviously. Isn't it funny? We only see one side of the moon. Hey, just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. But there are some you can point out on the near side of the moon as well. But I have no problem that all that is correct. But I'm saying that it's inside the moon where the real deal is, and that's what the Russian scientists was saying in 1970, that it's actually goes on inside the moon. That's where the whole thing comes from. And it was another kind of common theme through my life in the last 22 years, and the puzzle pieces being given to me, is that when I've gone public with something that's kind of bizarre and out there, something comes along that says, hey, see, you were right to go there. Look, hey, it's like a confirmation. And about 9 months after Human Race came out, I had an email from a lady in Brazil, I think it was. And she said, I read your book about the moon. Have you read a book called Earth by a lady called Barbara Marciniak? I met Barbara years ago. And she's what they call a channel. She, you know, like a psychic like Betty Shine, they will hear something and then they will report what they've heard. But people haven't come across this. What a channel is someone that literally just allows their body computer, I would say, to be taken over by a projected electromagnetic field, and they just speak the words. Basically, their body's in many ways taken over, and they allow it to be. So Barbara Marciniak is one of these channels, and she produced books in the 90s called Earth and Bringers of the Dawn, a great book, I thought, which are literally what came out of her mouth when she was in this channel mode. And she says that she was channeling some consciousness connected to the Pleiades. Anyway, I'd not read Earth, and so she gave me some page numbers, this email, and said, I think it'd be a good idea if you read it. And I sent for it, and it came within a few days, and I went through the page numbers. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The book came out in the mid-90s, and in the middle of all this other stuff about many other different subjects was this stuff about what she kind of channeled, that the moon was not real. It was a construct. It was an eye in the sky, or basically a computer system that was manipulating and dictating human perception on Earth, and that it was not possible for humans in effect to be truly free until A, they can break out of the influence of what's coming from the moon, or the moon is taken over by forces that have a benevolent agenda for humanity. Because at the moment, it was saying, at the time it was written anyway, the time it was published, that was not the case. And you know, when I was reading that, after publishing 9 months earlier, this Human Race Get Off Your Knees, it was saying basically the same thing. You know, that was because you put it out there, and that's something. It's always nice when these confirmations come like that. And again, I know it's hard for people, completely understand, for them in large numbers to perceive or conceive that life on Earth is being manipulated from the moon by non-human entities, but it is, and but it won't be for that much longer.
I have one last question, and of course it is related to chemtrails. Chemtrails, why?
Well, I think there's, in virtually every instance and every facet of this control agenda, there's multi-reasons for most things that they do. Not just one. There's a main reason, but then there's others. First of all, they have an agenda for the mass culling of the human population. I go into this in Remember Who You Are and how they're planning to do it and how they are in the process of doing it. And so one aspect of the chemtrails is that they come down, we breathe them in, and it does us a lot of damage in terms of health. And this disease called Magellan's disease, where these fibers, these technological fibers coming out of people's bodies, and no matter how many you pull them out, they're just there. It's like they're growing, you know. And that I am absolutely convinced is from chemtrails, because they started about the same time as each other. And my feeling is another content of chemtrails is a form of nanotechnology. And I think it's nanotechnology that is actually generating those fibers that seem to have some kind of life that is in Morgellons disease. So yes, on that level, they're doing it because it's part of the destruction of human health. But I think also they are seeking to create a sub-reality in a way, or a sub-atmosphere around the planet on the level that we interact with. And I think that the chemtrails are part of that. And also, they connect into HAARP, which has the ability. I mean, you know, Bernard Eastland, who was the man who applied for the patent for original patents for HAARP on behalf of a transnational corporation. He has said, he said at one point that HAARP has the ability to put a energetic shield around the planet, and it seems that there are more and more efforts to manipulate the atmosphere, the sea in which we live. As I've said many times, if you want to affect all the fish, what do? You affect the sea. Well, we are living in a sea of energy, and if you can impact upon that sea, you impact upon anyone who is interacting with it. And again, we come back to this defense shield against the truth vibrations. They're trying everything they can to stop humans being impacted by them. And one of the ways that they are doing it is by attacking and manipulating the energy sea field that we interact with, so that it is suppressing our ability to open and expand. And I think chemtrails are part of that. I think HAARP is definitely part of that. And another thing that I go into in this book, Remember Who You Are, which is about the mass culling of the population, but also about this whole energy shield, and that's what I call the radiation agenda. For years and years now, I've been ticking off more and more sources of radiation that humans are subjected to. And when I look, I mean, for instance, I met an Oxford Don in the 1990s called Kitty Little, Dr. Kitty Little, who had connections into, you know, British intelligence and stuff, and she had started to see that what I'm talking about now was real. And so I had a meeting with her, and she used to work for the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority. And so she was very, very expert in that whole area of nuclear power technology. And she told me then in the 1990s that the Rothschild family, who of course are fundamentally involved in this global conspiracy, were the force that led to the introduction of nuclear power. So now we have nuclear power stations all over the world, which are all potentially, catastrophic releases of radiation. And many of them are leaking like a sieve anyway. And so when I looked at what happened at Fukushima in Japan, it was just too much of a gift. That colossal release of radiation, which is still going on, was just too much of a gift for me to be an accident, or at least to accept it was an accident without further investigation. And I explain in the book that my feeling is that, and I put the evidence for it, and I'm not alone. There's other people that have come to the same conclusion, that actually Fukushima was blown up by small nuclear weapons, what are called gun-type nuclear weapons. It's interesting to note that Fukushima had a whole new so-called security and sensor system put in. And technology's continually getting smaller and lighter. Well, these bloody cameras at Fukushima that they put in the year before the explosion, they weighed 1,000 pounds. I mean, what, but when you put them together with a small gun-type nuclear weapon, and you take the casing off the nuclear weapon, I mean, they're ridiculously close to looking like each other. And then you realize that the firm that put them in was an Israeli company that's based at Dimona in Israel, which is the location of the Israeli massive nuclear weapons program. And after I'd come to these conclusions, there was a nuclear engineer called Arnie Gunderson who did a speech in Boston, I think it was. And it was an alert speech, because he said, we've realized that the explosion, or one of the explosions at Fukushima, has done something that should not be possible with a nuclear power station. It has in effect broken the speed of sound. It was a detonation speed wave, and a nuclear explosion caused by a nuclear power station alone should never ever cause a detonation speed wave. So his speech was, we realized that it is possible for a detonation speed wave to be caused by, well, maybe you haven't. Maybe you have identified a detonation speed wave because Fukushima was detonated, it wasn't a natural explosion. And as a result of that, of course, the atmosphere of the world is being irradiated on a very large scale, and it's increasing every day. And I would not for a second be surprised to see more such Fukushima accidents, quote, in the years to come, because they clearly have a agenda to irradiate far more than ever has been the atmosphere of the Earth. And I think that one reason is that they want a situation where there's a dramatically reduced population. And of course radiation will impact upon that, especially if it gets even more serious and powerful in the atmosphere. But also they know that there will be certain human genetic types that will mutate to be able to stand a greater amount of radiation, and they're the people, or the genetic lines, that they want to be around after this cull that they want has taken place. Because it seems to me, from my research over the years, that these entities have a problem with our atmosphere, and they can live and need to live in a much more irradiated atmosphere. And I think they're trying to change the atmosphere as well to become more suitable for them. Mm-hmm. And I remember another very prophetic film I watched called The Arrival, starred a guy called Charlie Sheen. Came out, I think, in the early 90s. and the story was that this Charlie Sheen character realized that NASA was controlled by non-human entities who look human, and that they were changing the Earth's atmosphere so that they could come and outwardly experience or be here with an atmosphere that suited them. I think something like that's definitely happening.